Okay, I don't normally do multiple uploads per day or release follow-ups this quickly after an original concept, but today is an exception because in my previous video I did not fully address the scope of the problem, and the comment section as a result of that somewhat confused me. It's mostly a result of my own approach to covering the subject, but still, it didn't sit right. Since I just covered the issue in a very general way, I'll do my best to summarize rather than rehash. At E3 this year, a game called Last Oasis was revealed, which utilized a concept of open-world nomadic survival with an emphasis on striding land ships that crawl around with giant wind sails on a series of rapidly moving legs. The designs are striking, they are undeniably artistic, and the overall impact, without a doubt, spurs curiosity. Now, these striding land ships are extremely reminiscent of sculptures done by an artist named Jansen, and a friend of mine named 21 Kiloton, whose channel I will link down below, was excited by the concept because he, as far as I can tell, enjoys Mr. Jansen's work and had seen it previously. 21 Kiloton reached out to see in what capacity he might be consulting, but in a twist of events, Theo Jansen was not aware that the game existed and was not a collaborating party or a partner in the process. Furthermore, he was not cited as an influence, an inspiration, or a factor of any kind anywhere in the game's credits or marketing material. So a question started to form as to whether or not the game was rightfully able to utilize the landship designs. Here's where I failed to properly articulate the entirety of the situation, and where the argument started to be made that the designs aren't exactly alike and you can't copyright broad concepts, otherwise no games would exist, etc., etc. Here's the thing, yes, but also no. Games nowadays are riddled with contracts. I had viewers saying, well, then every game that has guns would get sued. Okay, sure, Einstein. On a surface level, that might seem like the case, but the reality is that games we all play and enjoy are absolutely overrun with contracts that allow them to use real-world items and concepts. I actually personally know someone who works specifically in the industry of gun licensing and partners with video game companies to negotiate the rights for certain weapons to be in various games. It's complicated, it's lengthy, and there's a lot involved, but this assertion that Last Oasis obviously has the rights to use these designs because other games use pre-existing real-world material all the time is not exactly relevant or even related. Now, that by itself in a vacuum doesn't mean much, but consider this. While the entire landship design for any given model in Last Oasis is not exactly indicative of Theo Jansen's work, there is one particular section that is. The legs are a very deliberate design with a set of meticulously planned angles and bars that allow for smooth travel across a flat plane. This design, with its painstakingly crafted metrics, was built over time using custom methods by Jansen himself and is literally called Jansen's Linkage. Now, if we jump over to ArtStation, I've been able to find a profile for Jacob Ziomek, a 3D artist for Donkey Crew, the developers behind Last Oasis. Here is one of the landships that he posted, 3D modeled for the game. What we see is an exact replica of Jansen's Linkage. Here's where some people may again be crying out that this is not in fact an infringement, but the problem goes further. Jansen's Linkage was designed under a set of real-world parameters to solve a problem. That problem was the issue of smooth walking motion, and the resulting dimensions are such that the leg's range of motion can fulfill that goal under real-world circumstances. Last Oasis takes place in a digital environment. That digital space is not bound by real-world gravity or physics, and yet the exact leg structure is identical to Jansen's Linkage down to every single spar. This begs the question, why? Since the game is not bound by real-world problems, the developers could easily have crafted their own version with the same functional in-game results. This is where a lot of previous comments attempted to debunk the potential legal threat. The entirety of each ship is not identical to Jansen's work. They have cannons, they are larger, people ride them, etc. I'm not ignorant, I see these differences. But the mechanical legs are exactly identical despite being designed for real-world issues that are not even a factor in this game. And still, one could make the argument that it's just one piece, therefore it's not important enough to be subjected to legal ramifications. But now, consider this. Harley-Davidson in 1994 filed a sound trademark for their engine. This was a legal protection measure aimed at the noise their engine makes, not the physical construction, the literal sound, because they viewed it as their property and it defined their creation in a meaningful way. This application was ultimately unsuccessful, seeing as in the year 2000 they pulled the plug on their efforts, but it very clearly shows that the desire to protect first-party creative material, even in the extreme abstract, such as sound produced by a mechanical apparatus, most definitely exists. Now, this is not to claim that I am an expert of or even passively informed on copyright, trademark, or intellectual property legal disputes, but a widely recognized and very specific design called Jansen's Linkage is exactly used within Last Oasis, despite any lack of real necessity, and it has been utilized without credit, consultation, or partnership, which begs the question again, why? Jansen's linkage has been exhaustively modeled for various different purposes. It has applications and uses that extend far beyond the sculptures of Jansen himself, which leads me to speculate, and to be very clear, I'll say it again, speculate that this availability of 3D model versions led to Last Oasis utilizing them as the landship leg apparatus without modifying them, contacting Jansen, or getting any sort of permission. Now, as I said in the original video, copyright, trademark, or intellectual property infringement can happen entirely by accident, and they can happen all the time. To go even further, this very well may not be an issue at all, at least not one of any real consequence, and the game could be entirely within their right to utilize the concept with no credit given or royalties awarded. But the confusing response that these landships are not, in fact, closely related to Jansen's work is nothing short of absurd. Certain aspects of Last Oasis and its ships are derived from traditional inspiration. Absolutely, that is true. But there is a component that is well and truly beyond inspiration, and instead is an exact replica. But let's get something 100% crystal clear right now. This game looks really cool. Well, it looks like it has amazing potential, I guess. The melee combat I've seen leaves a lot to be desired, and the landscape seems open and bland at the moment, but conceptually, I am very interested in seeing what they can produce. The ideal resolution, if one is even necessary, mind you, at least to me, is a simple collaboration or acknowledgement between Donkey Crew and Jansen. He has wonderful ideas, it could be a wonderful game, it could benefit from having him as a consultant. They would of course hash out the details, but that's it. It does not need to affect the game's future. The point I was trying to make in the previous video is that, without knowing either party on a personal level, the situation is something to be regarded with extreme caution, and with a release date looming in just a couple of months, it's best to be aware of the early access titles you do choose to support, because early access as a concept is already treacherous enough without any of this even on the horizon. Here's where I would like to address something that may lead to all of this being a completely irrelevant topic. I have searched to see if Jansen's linkage is patented, and I was not able to find anything, at least not myself. If anyone else was, please post in the comments down below, which could subject the concept to the right of public domain. I'm not entirely certain, and even then, the complexity of who owns what from a strict legal perspective is overly complicated even for the people that outright study the field. But the correlation between Jansen's artwork, his designs, and his efforts is directly represented in Last Oasis, so the argument that it's not that close, there is obviously nothing wrong, is extremely confusing. Furthermore, I take legitimate offense to the assertion that these types of videos are reaching for views. Let me fully explain here that topics like this receive far less viewership than if I cover hyper-relevant industry news. If the goal truly was high viewership, I would be covering every little detail that drops about Cyberpunk 2077. Every tweet, every leak, every speculation, because topics like this pertaining to a game that is not part of the mainstream news cycle do not get as much viewership. A further and closely related claim to that of viewership is that I cover topics like this for money. Again, this is provably false. I produce YouTube content nearly full time, yes, but if it were really a function of maximized profit, I would layer a mobile game sponsor into every single video and remove any controversial topics from the agenda. Mobile games pay thousands of dollars to channels my size for a single promotion, and YouTube demonetizes controversial subjects more often than is comfortable. So if this were legitimately about making money, every video would be an all-caps title with a mobile game pre-roll ad covering the most relevant topic or whatever, like Cyberpunk 2077, or news until something else was more popular. I find Last Oasis to be an extremely interesting prospective game. A partnership between indie developers and a talented artist is one to be praised. Innovative concepts should be anticipated and looked forward to. But early access is already a risky business. Donkey Crew had a very unfortunate circumstance unfold with their previous game, Of Kings and Men. And on top of that, there is an exact replica of existing real-world material in the game, and it is unclear what effect that might have. But it is not a situation that should inspire people to hurl money at the screen without proper skepticism. This entire event is complicated by the fact that intellectual property laws are different around the globe. Since the design is used artistically, that leads to a different set of parameters in the US than it does in the EU, for example. It could also be applicable in an engineering sense, and the list goes on. I cannot claim with any degree of sincerity to be an expert on this topic, far from it, but what I see, after many years in the industry, is a situation that gives me pause, and makes me uneasy as to the eventual effects or possible ramifications. Another angle is that certain artistic representations in some regions are protected even without officially notarized paperwork. This is not a simple matter. The game is not directly selling physical copies of the Jansen linkage leg apparatus, or a one-to-one replica of the entirety of any of his designs from what I've been able to find, but the design is undeniably part of a larger concept that is being monetized, and I have to reiterate here, I don't wish the developers of Last Oasis ill, not at all, but I do not want to see the uneasy circumstances of legal confusion emerge post-release and impact a potential player base in a negative way. It's easy to point and laugh when an industry juggernaut like Fortnite gets sued over dance moves or a user interface or whatever it may be, but that kind of conflict for an indie title can be much more severe, and especially when it relates to a title I'm personally looking at with curiosity and intrigue, I don't want to see it all come to a head like getting T-boned at an intersection. It all may amount to nothing. Or something, I can't tell you for a fact, but looking at these types of situations in a proactive way is just something that I find myself often doing. You can like or hate that, but it's still going to always be true. Anyways, that's it. If you want to support, there's links down below. Have a nice night.